In these slides, we are going to go over the mechanics of this course. So if you want to, you can just skip to reading the PDF. If you are on campus, we'll go through these in class as well. But this is here just in case you need a little bit of information. So the mechanics of the class. We're going to cover course format, the materials that we have available online, the expectation of the way the course flows, the actual assignments you hand in, our collaboration and plagiarism policy, and this is very important to read and understand, and also a little bit of expectations about what you should expect out of the class and what we expect out of you. So the course format, if you're on campus, lectures are on Monday, and they consist of a lecture plus some in-class demos and exercises. If you're on eCampus, then those lectures will be available as PDFs and as recordings and a bunch of supplemental lectures that cover different material. There is a lab, one each week. For those of you on campus, attendance is mandatory, although you get one free missed lab in case you get sick or something like that, but you still have to hand in the lab. The labs consist of a little 5-minute quiz on paper and then between a 30 and 60-minute guided tutorial with some simple problems. The TAs will walk you through some of the stuff that you need to know. If you're on eCampus, then there's a little video that goes over what you need to know at the start of lab. So ZY Books, by the way, is our electronic textbook. Recitation section, there is one each week. Again, attendance is mandatory with one free missed section. The point of the recitation sections is to get you started on the homeworks and to get over some basic conceptual problems. For the homeworks, there is one each week for 9 total, and these are going to be longer, more challenging problems, and they build a little bit on each other. And the first one's going to be due the second week of class, weekly thereafter. So the idea is that you move from learning some basic concepts, some syntax and whatnot, and then to open-ended problem solving. There are 2 exams, 2 midterms, 1 final. They are in class if you are on campus, and they're online for eCampus students. So grading, this is going to be through a combination of Canvas, Gradescope, and ZY Books. So ZY Books records your progress as you read the textbook, and then we update Canvas from that. The exams, homeworks, and labs are all going to be graded in Gradescope, and then those numbers imported back into Canvas. But you must also turn in your scripts to Canvas. If you don't turn in your scripts to Canvas, you will not have your assignments graded. Homework format. There are 3 problems that carry through the term. You can check these out at the full term assignments pages under Canvas. And there is no solution key handed out for these. So the point of these is that usually you don't write just one piece of code and then throw it away. You use it and then change it and then reuse it and then add to it. So this is a little bit of practice for that. It also lets you build up a more complicated problem by the time you reach the end of the course than you would have if we gave you one single assignment. It also means that you don't have to understand a new problem every time. So our materials that we have available, the electronic textbooks, ZY material, and they're basically, you learn the syntax and the commands, and there's little participation exercises that can make sure that you understand the material. The lecture slides, these are primarily PDFs, and I've broken these into primary lectures, so these are focused more on how do you take a problem and solve it, and then a bunch of secondary supplementary lectures that cover a lot of the same material that you'll see in the ZY books, but from a slightly different viewpoint. There are also example scripts that you can download and use at will, and there's also videos that walk through example scripts. The lab and homework assignments are also available online. Some of them have starter scripts you need to download. There's also practice, midterms, and finals available online, and there is always MATLAB help, both online through MATLAB and through Google. And it's pretty straightforward to Google for, tell me how does fprintf work, and it'll show up. So the overall course flow, weeks 1 through 3 are a little bit confusing, but they're really not too difficult. You're basically going to treat MATLAB as a glorified calculator. And mostly it's, you got to learn how MATLAB works, you've got to learn how, where should you type this and how should you type it, but the concepts aren't that difficult. In weeks 3 to 5, it gets very hard. This is where we talk about program flow and control, and it's just a couple simple commands, but they're really difficult to put together. And then by week 6 through 8, it won't be quite so difficult anymore. We'll keep practicing that program flow and control. We'll learn a few new commands, but basically it's not quite as difficult. And then weeks 9 through 10 are fairly light. Make some pretty pictures, and they're conceptually fairly simple. And I find generally that it starts to click around week 6. So if you're feeling over your head and frustrated, just bear with it, keep working on the problems, and at some point it'll start to make sense. So assignment grading, CUI books, 10%. There's a bunch of participation exercises you need to do on time before the lab. There's the labs themselves. They are worth about 15%. And that's the lab exercises plus the little in-lab quiz for the on-campus folks. Homework is about 35%. And roughly that breaks down into some points for comments and pseudocode, writing nice clean code, some part for just plain formatting stuff right, and then the rest of that's just for getting the code to do what you're supposed to do. You have to follow the instructions for handing in. If you turn things in wrong, we will not grade it. And just to make sure that you get it right, we do have a practice hand-in for each of the labs and homeworks, and we'll quickly make sure that you're doing the hand-in right. There's also no late homeworks. Turn in what you've got when you've done it. You can turn in more than once. There's also lots of extra credit to make up for when you mess it up, which does happen. So the assignment hand-in, each lab and homework has a Word document with spaces for you to put in. So basically you download the Word document, follow the instructions, put your answers back into the document, turn it into a PDF and upload it to Gradescope, and then take all of the scripts that you write, zip them up, and hand them into Canvas. And some gotchas: make sure your cover sheet's signed and filled out. Make sure that you're cutting and pasting images and text right. Like I said, we've got Lab 0 and Homework 0 as practice for these. I'll point out again that there are no late homeworks, so you need to turn in what you have when you finish doing it. And I suggest that you turn in stuff every time you finish your lab, finish your recitation section, finish working your problem. That way at least you have something turned in. And also make sure you turn in the correct assignment. This happens quite a lot, that you turn in Lab 3 for Homework 7, for example. Like I said, we've got one trial run, Lab 0, Homework 0, and the idea behind this is let's just practice it before you actually have to do it. And then after that, there are deductions for incorrectly formatted homeworks, or we may plain just not grade them. And the reason we're so picky about this is we do over 4,000 submissions over the course of the quarter, and we really don't have time to go through and fix a bunch of people turning in things the wrong way. So there are valid excuses for when you need to say, I need a homework extension. Things like, my relative died and I have to go to the funeral. I got into a car accident and I broke my wrist and I can't type. Please don't send me excuses like, MATLAB crashed just before I was going to turn it in, so can I extend the deadline? I've had a hard week with several midterms. I have this thing coming up next week. I'm going to be out of town. That's fine. Everything's online, so you can do it before you go. There's no reason to do it after you come back. Most importantly, plagiarism policy. So no plagiarism is what it comes down to. You are free to work together, but that does not mean copying code, copying friends' assignments from previous years, copying from your friends, sitting down working on it together, and then copying each other's answers. Basically, don't copy. And there's an entire quiz online to help you walk through various cases. And if you ever have any questions about whether something is plagiarism, please just ask. So just to make this point, if you are caught copying a problem, your grade for that homework is going to be minus 10%. That means minus 10 points for a 100-point homework. That's the entire homework, which means you're better off just not turning something in than you are copying from somebody, turning it in, and getting caught. And I will file academic dishonesty forms for both people, both the person who copied and the person they copied from. Like I mentioned, there's a quiz on Canvas. Go take it. If you have any questions, ask. And I really, really hate filing academic dishonesty forms. And I usually end up filing somewhere between 2 and 12 every quarter. Please make this a quarter where I don't have to file very many. Okay, so what is okay? You can talk over problems with other students. Just go away and do something else before you write up on your own. Do not copy code and then edit it or delete all the variables or change all the variable names or just post it anywhere. And by the way, looking at code and then copying it line by line is basically the same as cutting and pasting it. And that's true also of having somebody sit there and look over your shoulder and tell you what to type. So with every homework and every lab, there's a cover page, and this includes information about who you worked with and what websites you used. And this is for your protection. So if we see that your homework is very similar to someone else and you haven't worked together, then that's more suspicious than if you have worked together. And again, if you don't know if something is acceptable, just ask. So our expectations are that you finish the ZY books reading assignments before lecture and lab, that you skin the lab assignment before you show up at lab, and in lab you work on the labs. You finish and hand in the lab then or shortly after. There's a little bit of extra time if you need to work on it. If you've got extra time, you can work on some ZY books challenge exercises for extra credit. After that, start the homework and get that started at the recitation section. And you want to skim those homework problems before you show up in your recitation section. Aim to work on about one problem every day or two. And ask questions and participate in activities. Get help early and often. Office hours. If you go to office hours, please don't show up with I have no idea what to do. At least have thought through the problems and have some questions for the TAs before you show up. So your responsibility before your first lab, answer the quiz on how to survive ENGR112, do the collaboration policy quiz, and make sure MATLAB is downloaded on your laptop and or get Citrix, and bring your laptop to the recitation section.